Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
What precisely makes beef corned?
Oh, I have no idea. I know that corned beef. I don't know why it's called that.
How would one corn beef?
It's just a brining process.
Before it's cooked, okay.
Yeah, so like when you get the corned beef at the store, it's already been brined.
Okay.
And then when you like cook it, that's what the little spice pack is for. It's like more of the brining spices.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is Irish, or is it one of the things that's like a Jewish American thing that like
it's like a Jewish American thing. Irish people don't eat corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day.
But they do eat potatoes.
Irish people eat lots of potatoes.
That we know.
There was a whole famine about it.
Hello, everybody. I almost said, how are you? How are you? How's it going on this
good.
beautiful,
I'm
beautiful St. Patrick's Day?
How are you?
I'm Will. It is St. Patrick's Day. Yay!
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about some St. Patrick's Day stuff. So.
Oh, hey, look at you.
I thought it was terrible.
That was some okay wordplay.
I've been working on it. So
working on your okay wordplay.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. So St. Patrick's Day is one that you're really enthusiastic about, correct?
I don't know that I'm like super enthusiastic about it, but you
usually you're like St. Patty's Day. I mean, you're not coming to the yard with Flag Day. You know what I mean? Like
no. No, there were like a handful of holidays every year that my mom kind of went all out for. And so I have like traditions for them.
Mm-hmm.
And St. Patrick's Day is like, I would wake up, if it was like a school day, I would wake up and she would have bought me Lucky Charms. And if it was a weekend, I would wake up and she would make me green clover shaped pancakes. And then she would put like green food dye in my milk and all kinds of stuff like that. So she like went all out for St. Patrick's Day, and then we would watch Darby O'Gill and the Little People when I got home from school, or if it was weekend, just whenever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's just like, I like to keep the traditions alive. They're fun.
I think one of the reasons why it's one of the more fun ones is it works equally for children and adults because
because now that I'm a grown up, all I do is just get drunk.
Yeah, and eat salty food.
Yeah, and I make stout cupcakes with Bailey's buttercream, and sometimes I make a little whiskey caramel to drizzle over top.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
Because I remember my mom being all about it when we were kids, and we actually went out like looking for leprechauns and stuff.
Yeah.
And she would sprinkle glitter and like the green too. I think that it's super gimmicky with the green, and I think the fantasy. I think that lends itself to children, and it also doesn't have much roots in religion. I mean, obviously St. Patrick. I mean, it gets there, but
it's
one
not
of the
like
more secular.
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody can just go to town without it being taboo. And yeah, like I said, I mean, it bridges from the fantasy as a kid to like the fun as an adult. And I actually remember going out on St. Patrick's Day one weekend with my parents, and because there was a parade in DC. Is there always a parade? That's a thing, right? There
are really large parades in usually major cities. But you would think it would be Boston, but weirdly outside of like Dublin, the largest parade is in Savannah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but they're like Savannah, Boston, Chicago does a big one. I think they turn the river green in Chicago.
Yeah. But it's one of the first times that I had a concept of drunk people.
Ah, okay.
And because I remember my mom being a little bit like Like, she was mostly like, it's fine, everything's fine, but she was a little on edge. Like, a little, like, because we were properly kids, like, we were young, and I remember being at, like, a pub, and it was, like, 4 or 5 in the afternoon, we were eating food, and there were drunk people around, and I was kind of like, because up until then, or around this point, the only other concept I had of being drunk was either Looney Tunes or Lucy, like I Love Lucy.
Okay.
The Vitameata Vegemin, so... Which holds up to this day. One of the greatest comedic performances of all time. But yeah, so it was always a lot of fun for me. And I took to the fantasy of it a lot. I really liked the leprechauns and, you know, fairies and stuff. And so we're gonna talk about 2 things today. One of which is Darby O'Gill and the Little People. That's probably why most of you have clicked on this.
I would. Well, I don't know. You did mention yesterday that we got some people from Merlin, so I would. We'll see. Because first we're going to talk about.
I was going to say we're going to make you wait. We're going to make you wait because first we're going to talk about the 1999 NBC miniseries, The Magical Legend of the Leprechauns.
Yeah, which has several actors with many accolades amongst them.
I mean, and Roger Daltrey, so...
There's an EGOT in this cast. It's insane.
Once upon a time,
It's a real advantage of being invisible.
in a land where dreams come true, a forbidden love burned brightly
Come away with me. Where's my daughter?
and sparked an epic battle. This November, the world will see and believe the legend of the Leprechauns. NBC Sunday in 3 weeks.
So this is a movie. It is seared in my mind. I couldn't believe how much of it I still remembered. Because if you had asked me beforehand, I would tell you that I watched it like maybe 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then while we were watching, especially that first hour, I think I think a lot of young people, it's like they have a tendency to tune out of things even when it's something they like.
Yeah.
So it's like that first hour I've seen a lot, but I have such visceral memories of this thing that is not a thing. Like, people don't know what it is.
It's not like Merlin. Like, Merlin feels a lot more universal to, like, our age group. But this one is decidedly not. In fact, the only memory I have of it was that one St. Patrick's Day, like 6 years ago, where we put it on randomly and Jill was there.
And it was on Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
And it was well into the movie. So we were clashing between the human storyline and the fantasy storyline. And I think it was when Whoopi Goldberg showed up as the Grand Banshee. And Jill was like, what the crap are we watching? Like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
So I guess in the 80s and 90s, miniseries were like a thing for television. It was like for sweeps back when. Do you remember the Old World? Like,
I do. Like, so much of it is actually like seared into my mind. But it's like I can't imagine shows doing something for Sweeps Week now. Like, that's not a thing anymore.
There was like a weird structure worked into like and you would tune into your favorite show, and sometimes it would be a rerun or, God forbid, a clip show, and it's like. Yeah, it was wild. The wild fucking West. But
I mean, I would argue that it's more the Wild West now.
Absolutely. But,
it was, I get it.
It was incredibly tame and structured. You're right. That was completely inverse. But it was like 2 or 3 times a year, there would be like, usually each network had a thing. So there'd be like an event. And they did Merlin, which was Merlin is kind of what's risen to the top. It's kind of the creme de la creme. And we covered it back in June for Midsummer last year, if you want to hear that. But there was a lot. There was like an Alice in Wonderland miniseries. There was Gulliver's Travels.
I remember Gulliver's Travels. It was Ted Danson, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, I think it was Ted Danson.
And they did The Odyssey, which is another one that I've threatened on this podcast because it's Isabella Rossellini and Vanessa Williams and Bernadette Peters.
Yeah, I don't remember who's Odysseus.
Armand Assante.
Right. We do this every time we talk about it. I forget every time. And then you tell me and I'm like, that's right. It is him.
So around but pretty much after Merlin, things had peaked and there was nowhere to go but down. So around like the 99, 2000, 2001, they were still making them, but it was like it turned into, I think at this point, Hallmark became involved and they just got stupid.
Well, they also got way too into the like digital effects. Like the Magical Legend of the Leprechaun looks bad. Like most of the time. It looks bad unless Randy Quaid is on screen, but then you're still stuck looking at Randy Quaid. So it's like, who's the real loser?
You were really baffled by romantic lead Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
6'5" Randy Quaid.
It was weird.
We were in a very just because you can doesn't mean you should place with technology.
Yeah.
Because when we talked about Merlin, there's a handful of things that are janky in Merlin, but what's more impressive is how good so much of it looks.
Agreed.
You know, it's
and it does have that consistency where this Magical Legends of the Leprechaun is wildly inconsistent from shot to shot.
So I was 14 when this came out, and I've talked about this point in my life a little bit on the podcast, but I was very confused. I've said several times, like in some way I was more mature than my peers, and in other ways I was very much not. And I wasn't handling the transition from like youth into adulthood very well. And so in particular, my 9th grade year in high school is very painful, like remembering it and stuff. And because I evened out, but I just remember being 14 and clinging to this because it was one of the few things that was giving me like
something.
Yeah, like and it's really juvenile. Watching it, I was like, this is really juvenile until the handful of times it's not.
Yeah, it got really dark a couple of times.
And I remember I had a friend Tara, and she loved this movie. So we watched it a bunch, like after school, that like year. But the other thing I remember about it is it was like a dismal failure. It flopped so hard because I remember Jay Leno used to give away DVD copies of it as prizes. And he would always be like the lowest rated NBC miniseries of all time.
That's hilarious. That's like, that might be the funniest thing Jay Leno's ever done.
And then something trumped it. So he was like, I have to like up my game. Have to
do something else, yeah.
But yeah, so it's basically Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
It's leprechauns, and well, it's 2 stories. There's a human story and a fantasy story. And the human story is Randy Quaid is in Ireland for some like nefarious capitalist thing. Do they ever really say, is it a golf course or?
So basically he works for this company that sends him there to see if they can like buy up all the land and houses and essentially put like a resort, like a golf resort there. Okay. Like as if Ireland doesn't already have enough golf courses.
Like Ireland's some untapped resource.
Yeah,
like.
No one lives there. Like everybody's gonna be so crazy about the Ireland golfing, and it's like, bitch, we been knew about the Ireland golfing.
And so he has a meet cute with Kathleen. That I know, that I remember.
Yeah. Her name is Orla Brady.
Yeah, where he finds her bathing in the river and spies on her, and it's like this big plot point until it's not.
It really is. It's like, it's for like the first episode and a half, she's calling him a peeping Tom. And it's like, what?
And she has these 4 brothers, one of whom is Peter Serafinowicz.
Which was hilarious, but also so weird.
And they're present through the whole thing in a weird way.
They really are.
It's one of the things that annoys me so much about these miniseries is it's like they have nothing but time, and yet somehow I feel like even less gets accomplished. It's like we have like 3 hours should be so much time to efficiently tell this sweeping dual romance.
Yeah, especially because whenever you see Romeo and Juliet, it's like a tight 90 minutes. It's like, it doesn't need to be 3 hours long.
It just does feel like it accomplishes so little. And one thing I will go ahead and say is I think this is actually probably fine for kids if they have any tolerance for like the old special effects.
Yeah, but do you not worry that a child would get bored watching this?
Probably, actually.
Okay. Because I would worry that a child would get bored. And specifically during the Randy Quaid
The
parts.
human
Because,
stuff, and there's too
that
much
is
of it.
like not interesting or like new or fresh or special in any way. It's just weirdly Randy Quaid talking down to this woman and getting a priest to tell her that he didn't assault her. And it's just like so weird.
So yeah. So she catches him spying on her. Granted, his foot was caught, but
yeah, he was trying to leave.
Yeah.
As soon as he realized she was like nude, he was like, "Oh, I need to leave." And then his foot got caught in a branch, and he fell and startled her.
Well, and then a second time he sneaks up on her. This time with a camera, and so it's like he's taking pictures of her.
Right.
And so they like chase him into a church, and he befriends because I mean you can always trust an Irish Catholic priest to do the right thing. And so she accuses him in front of the priest of being a peeping Tom. And the priest was like, "Those are some hefty allegations, young lady.
Those are serious accusations. He seems like a nice young man." And I just was like,
You had
awful.
You had a crisis like 30 or 40 minutes into the first episode.
I mean, in total fairness, this was 21 years ago, but still.
Well, do you want Harvey Weinstein? Because that's how you get
Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, and so basically he asks Randy Quaid, "Are you a peeping Tom?" And he was like, "No." And he goes, "See, it's all ironed out." And she was kind of like, "I guess." And so then they fall into this like sweeping romance, one for the ages. And it like...
That's no Kermit and Miss Piggy, I'll tell you that right now.
All of this is juxtaposed with a war between the leprechauns and the Troopin' Fairies.
They don't stop calling them that.
You were like, "What is a trooping fairy?" And I just looked at you and said, "I don't know." And they do not stop saying it.
They really don't. And it was at no point explained. Like, are trooping fairies a different kind of fairy? Are they the only fairies that go down to the earth? Because, like, none of the royal fairies go down to the earth except for Princess Jessica.
I was waiting for you to have a bigger problem with that yesterday, and you were saving it for the podcast.
Well, I said it out loud. Her name is Jessica.
The Irish fairy princess's name, was like Karen, Sandy, not like...
Her parents' names are Boric and Morag, and her name is Jessica? You're kidding me.
We can't even get a Siobhan or something.
No, no, Siobhan, Nev, Maeve, anything. Jessica and Mickey?
Mickey's fine. Mickey's Muldoon.
Fine. Mickey Muldoon, whatever. Princess Jessica of the Fairies? Absolutely not. I refuse.
Halt the projector. So it's a completely mixed bag from here on out because there's actually stuff that I kind of want to praise. Like, I think some of the design, like, they went all out with the fairies. Like,
they certainly, I will say, they really committed to their aesthetics in a way that is, I think, admirable because...
Yeah. There was nothing half-assed about it.
No, there was nothing half-assed, and I didn't, like, wall-to-wall hate it, like, so that I wanted to, like, you know, get drunk or something, but there were points that some of the fairy stuff was like, why did you choose that as your fairy stuff? Because their whole palace looks like the Gaudi Cathedral in Barcelona, and I was like, why, though? Like, what a weird thing.
I thought the design of the fairy palace was so interesting in a way that I was like, I kept wanting more of that from the movie, and we don't really get it. Because there's even like an underwater fairy palace, and you were like, oh, is there going to be mermaids? And I was like, nope. Like,
no, yeah, it's weird.
Elements of the underwater palace are interesting, but it's mostly just like coral with bubbles. And I kind of was like, it's so close to being cool, but something is just not. I don't know. They're all white and blonde with insane blue eyes, so it's like a little bit kind of like, oh.
Well, it's like insane blue eyes, but it's like the blue eyes from the Dune miniseries. And it's like, so all basically for like the first 90 minutes of this thing, I was like, I want to watch Dune. Can we watch Dune instead?
And all the Gaussian blur filters.
Oh my God. At one point I was like, how are they even, the lighting must have been so bright in this scene. How are they even seeing anything? How do they know they're walking the right direction?
And I did always appreciate the aesthetic of the fairy, like their clothes and stuff.
Yeah.
But I even with appreciating it, I remember being a little annoyed that there was like not much variety. Like it's like, this is a fairy male uniform and this is a fairy female uniform.
Yeah.
And like the king and queen don't have a lot of costume changes, which again, the fairy king is Roger Daltrey of The Who. So there are things worth seeing in this movie.
There are definitely things worth experiencing.
Also, I think a lot of the leprechaun stuff worked, or at least there was a charm to it. I kind of did like how scoundrelly they were.
Sure.
And the lead guy, Mickey, I remember saying,
his name's Daniel Betts.
Daniel Betts. I remember being like, oh, he's cuter than I remember.
Yeah.
And I was like, in a way that I feel like I would have clocked that at 14, but...
So, like, I guess my biggest issue is, and I assume that this was at the beginning of several of these people's careers. Like, I know it was the beginning of Kieran Culkin's career. So I can't find fault in that. He was still a child. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, was this at the beginning of Kevin McKidd and Tony Curran's careers? Because they are bad in this.
I mean,
like,
I think there's only so much they were getting direction-wise.
That's probably true, too. I just was like, man, I really like both of you, and this is, like, not great. And then them wigs, their stupid orange wigs. But, like, only half of them had wigs, because Kieran Culkin's hair was real and Tony Curran's hair was real, but Daniel Betts and Kevin McKidd, who has curly red hair naturally, were wearing these horrible, like, straw straight red wigs. It was very weird.
They were very committed to the aesthetics and being able to tell what was what at a glance. So I think they were like, why Kieran's hair was like dyed hair was good enough and the rest of them needed Party City wigs. I don't know. But
yeah, super weird.
For better and worse, because some of it does not work. But I did like all of the fantasy critters that are kind of scattered throughout.
Yeah, all of the like Irish
folklore.
Yeah, mythology kind of stuff was cool. Like, I mean, leaving aside the fact that it's Whoopi Goldberg, there's a banshee and there's they have pukas at one point, and
there's little green like
it was like
bog
that
monsters and a headless horseman
cool.
type thing, and it just like all of that. I that's the kind of stuff I want from these things, and they do give it to us, like I said, for better and worse, because there does come a point where it like, what are the Oakshees? It was like the tree fairies or they're not fair. They're like
tree spirits. They're sort of like dryads, except they weren't.
Yeah. Oh, right, because that was the scene where they suddenly had like guns.
Yeah.
And you were like,
yeah, they were just like flying, so that the Mickey, right, was flying through the air, like trying to escape the fairies, and they had these like fucking bazooka guns, and they just like
they later explained away as being like spider webs, but
yeah,
still,
but they like blew up a rock with it. And I was like, oh my god.
The first time the fairies showed up, you were like beside yourself, because it was basically like 4 twinks just like flew in.
Yeah, just like 4 blonde twinks. Like it looked like the start of a gay porn. Like a rumble porn or something.
Well, and both the fairies and the leprechauns have these like knobs.
Dildos?
Yeah.
Like person-sized dildos?
Out, you like shrieked. And
well,
they like
first, because they just pull out these like small the parts that look the most like dildos, they pull them out of who knows where, and then they like and they turn long into like staffs. But they're just still all knobby. With like
ribbed,
with like dick tops. It was so bizarre. You can't tell me it's not bizarre.
I mean, watching it with adult eyes, I was kind of like, oh my.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
But yeah. So it's a very silly plot. They're at war because they're at war, and
it makes just as much sense as Romeo and Juliet. Like, why did the Montagues and the Capulets hate each other? Because they always have.
And the Grand Banshee keeps telling them to stop, and they don't listen.
Or they'll pay the ultimate price. And no one seems to know what that means.
Because they
and I just was like, you're gonna be dead, bro.
They are shocked and betrayed when they do die.
Yeah.
And then they go to war, and then Jessica and Mickey, because they take 2 potions. Why do they take the first potion?
Okay, the first potion is the poison that makes it look like they're dead.
No, I mean at the tree. They take a potion at the tree.
They didn't take a potion at the tree. They just lay down at the tree, and it went all lightning-y, and then they woke up at the tree.
Oh, okay.
There was nothing. There was no rhyme or reason.
This is a bad episode.
I think it's a really good episode.
They take a poison. If their families won't stop fighting, then they're going to kill themselves.
Well, they want it to. It's very different from Romeo and Juliet because Romeo and Juliet both understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to, the quote unquote priest, the uncle that likes butter in the swamp, which opens a whole host of questions that are never answered.
This is the Leprechauns, not Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. So they go out. Well, he's like the priest, though, from Romeo and Juliet. That's his character equivalent. So they go out to him and he's like, you take this poison, it'll look like you're dead, but you have to take the antidote within 10 minutes or else you'll be for real dead. And they're like, got it.
Or else you'll pay the ultimate price.
Or else you'll pay the ultimate price. And they're like, we got it. Cool. And so they decide that they are going to basically drink this poison in the middle of a battlefield, call their parents over somehow to watch them be dead, and then Kathleen will administer the antidote. And then Kathleen really bones it pretty hard.
We did this wrong. I should have made you just explain it back to me.
Oh, man.
And again, considering that we had 3 hours to tell this story, there's no sense of stakes. There's no sense of time, how long any of this is taken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so when Kathleen bones it, she drops the antidote on the only rock in that field.
Well, she does more than drop the rock. She's trying to drive the fucking buggy. Because the buggy race and the having the buggy with the horse, whose name is Firefly, we know that much. That's a huge plot point in this movie, is this fucking buggy. And how she's, because at the buggy race, she's not allowed to drive it for some reason. So it's almost implying that she can't drive it. And then she proves that she can't drive the buggy when she drives it into the field. And I was like, she's just going to run over them, isn't she? And she doesn't, but she does hit a ditch or something. And she flies out of the buggy across and over in front of the horse. And then the antidote flies out of her hand. And you're right, smashes on the only rock in the field. And she's just like, oh. That's it. It's so stupid.
I was cooking by this point, so I had kind of checked out a little bit, and I was like, we've got enough to talk about.
Yeah, we're fine. It's fine.
Oh my God. So
then Randy Quaid, he decides to come and help her. And that goes about as well as you think it would, because he trips on the other rock and literally flies forward into the horse's bucking foot. So the horse literally kicks him straight in the foot, and then he falls down an even deeper ditch. And the fairies have to all lift him out with their and it only takes 6 fairies to lift 6'5" Randy Quaid out of this ditch.
He seems like he'd be dense.
He does seem like he'd be dense. So anyway, then the Grand Banshee shows up and they're like, well, we dropped the antidote, blah, blah, blah. Can't you save them? And it's like, only if everybody wants peace in their hearts. And the warlord guy is like, I'm out of a job. And it's just very silly. Very silly.
So she waited for every single fairy and leprechaun to want peace in their hearts.
Which is a risky game, because there's got to be people that live in that fairy castle who couldn't give 2 shits if Princess Jessica died. You know what I mean?
You did forget when they go to visit the Grand Banshee and she lives in this like awesome hotel.
It is just a hotel suite. You know, Whoopi Goldberg was like, I'm not going to Ireland. You're going to film my scenes in this hotel.
And I forgot at the end because they come back because everybody comes back because nothing matters. There's no stakes.
Yeah.
And there's a wedding, which was actually kind of sweet. I remember liking because Kathleen's wearing that beautiful white dress and it's the shot of like her and Randy Quaid are watching the fairy wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that song that plays like 5 times during the movie.
It really does.
It's like that season of Once Upon a Time when they were in Camelot. And Henry, the only song he had was Only You.
Oh, God.
Do you remember he just kept playing it?
Yeah.
Because Jen was like, what is this? I was like, it's a song from the 80s. It's a pop song. But by that point, you know, we've fallen in love with our captor. So it's like nice. And the Whoopi Goldberg is in like a silver dress because all up until this point, she's got like crazy black and purple witch hair.
And like feathers and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in the end, she's like in silver with like no hair and just like 2 giant wings on her head.
Yeah.
It's magnificent. Like, oh, man. So, yeah, I had pulled up, I meant to say this in the beginning, I had pulled up a chunk of the Variety review by Stephen Oxman.
Okay.
And he was mentioning the Gulliver's Travels and Alice in Wonderland and all that. And he said, so instead of finding full-fledged stories to tell, they've now conjured 4 hours from little more than the idea of a mythical character that is best known to Americans as a serial pitchman. Screenwriter Peter Barnes laboriously pieces together a narrative borrowing obviously and heavily from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet to give the magical legend of the leprechauns a necessary but deeply jarring push. Perhaps next time we'll be treated to a King Lear with live action Smurfs or something.
Hey, I would probably watch that, you know?
And we did gloss over the single most baffling thing about this entire enterprise is that it debuted on November 7th.
Yeah, what the fuck? That is so bananas to me because you were like, I remember watching this in November and I was like, how on earth did they not release this on St. Patrick's Day?
In March?
Yeah. And you were like, I don't know, but they didn't. And I looked it up and yeah, November 9th. Fucking so weird. I don't get it.
So it's available to watch for free on Amazon Prime. You can also find like it pirated on like YouTube and Dailymotion and all that.
Yeah.
It's not good, but it's worth seeing. Like, I wish I was better at film editing because I just edit down like a 5-minute best of reel.
Yeah,
because you don't need the human stuff.
I agree. I think it's worth experiencing, but now that I've done so, I don't want to do it again. I'm good now.
It's just so silly and such a time capsule to a very specific point in time.
Yeah,
like,
I would definitely love for any of our listeners, are you familiar with this? Like, did you remember this? I want to hear from you. For sure.
Does anybody know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm so curious if there are people who are nostalgic about this.
About the magical legend of the leprechauns?
Yeah, I'm very curious and
such
interested.
A hefty, like...
Yeah.
Because it's also happening in modern day.
Yeah, like it's like in 1999 is when it's happening.
So it's not like an ancient tale that's like unfolding or like it's it doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's bizarre.
So, okay. Well, on that note.
Yeah, we're going to go watch Darby O'Gill, which Will doesn't like. So we will have
I'm going to really try.
We're going to have a opposite of this conversation when we get back.
Reverse dynamic.
Have you ever seen the seagulls flying over heather, or the crimson sails on Galway Bay, the fishermen on fun? Oh, the earth is filled with beauty, and it's gathered all together in the form and face and dainty grace of a pretty Irish girl. Oh, she is my dear, my darling one, her eyes so sparkling, full of fun. No other can match the likes of her. She is my dear, my darling one, my smiling and beguiling one. I love the ground she walks upon, my darling Irish girl.
So, Now we're both sick. God.
I'm not sick. I just
okay,
can't.
Monica.
I can't. I'm fine.
Fine.
No, I just can't stop sneezing. And I there's like a tickle in my nose and I can't stop sneezing. But other than that, I feel fine.
Mm-hmm. That's what the coronavirus would want you to say.
Look, as I've said before, if I have coronavirus, all I can hope for is the sweet release of death.
Don't take my shtick.
I'm just like, I'm so tired and I want to stop sneezing.
Okay, well, we're back and we just watched the 1959 classic Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Sure did.
It's a Disney movie. It's live action, and it was very well received. I guess not surprised, but it's got like a 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was like, oh shit.
Well, you don't like it, but
You keep saying that.
you make a little snit every time I try to watch it on St. Patrick's Day.
Mm-hmm. Well, why do you like it? What does it mean to you?
Well, it's nostalgic for me because I watched it as a child a lot with my mom and my mom's family, and I also just like it. I think it's funny. And I think it's cute. And I think like 26-year-old Sean Connery could get it.
Is that how old he was? I thought he was younger.
He's something. He might be younger. I don't really remember.
I thought he was like 21 or 22 and we were like, yikes.
So he was born in 1930 and this was 59. So no, 29. So older than we thought.
I think I watched it once or twice. Like I was aware of it, but I remembered not liking it because it scared me. And I think it's one of those things when I was a kid that I saw. And I have a bad track record. Well, I have a track record with Banshees, I tell you.
Yeah, we have a lot of Banshees. We were just talking about it yesterday.
Yeah. And what was it, our Magicians episode or something? Yeah, it was like, it scared me. And it's so funny watching it now because it's so cheesy, the effect.
Yeah.
Until it's the scene where she came at the door.
Yeah, it's kind of a jump scare almost.
Yeah. And I was like, there it is. That's the one. It scared me, so it was very easy for me to be like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. And I guess fast forward, and we were adults living together and like hanging out and stuff. And you would always want to put it on St. Patrick's Day. And the issue that I have is I just think it's boring. I guess without that nostalgic factor, there wasn't really something pulling me in. And I was going to ask you that. So you did like it as a kid, though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I always thought it was like silly and funny. Like with the, for a while in the middle of the movie, Darby has King Brian of the Leprechauns in a burlap sack. But every time someone else tries to look at him, it looks like a bunny.
I was laughing at the bunny.
I thought that was like the height of comedy when I was a child.
Okay, yeah. So I think you tried to get me to watch it once in like 2009 or 2008.
Well, you did successfully sit down and watch it with me once since I've lived here, but you didn't care for it. And then every time I'd try to put it on St. Patrick's Day, you would scoff. So I started watching it without you.
Okay.
On my own.
I'm sorry. The point that I was getting to is I know I have seen it recently, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think you put it on and I was in the room, but I was not watching it.
Right.
And so that's what I did was this time I was like, okay, I can focus for 90 minutes. And so and also, to be fair, in my defense, I am shit with accents. And we have since started watching everything that we can with captions.
Yeah.
So I was sitting down with purpose watching it this time. And it was the kind of thing where I was like, I could catch myself drifting in the first 2 or 3 minutes. And I was like, no, you're doing something. And so I fully watched it this time. And, I think I was paying attention for a good 80 of the 90 minutes.
That's fair.
So it was cute. And personally, I don't know how many more times I would watch it, but I think I could definitely watch it again. And I think I would probably like it more now that I actually know the story and I'm not paying attention to the story.
Like not trying to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, because I think some of the bits of humor and some of the characters, like, for instance, what was her name? Sheila.
The meddling one? Yeah,
the widow woman. I was just assuming she was good. Like, I was assuming she was a good guy for easily half of the movie. And then I was like, oh, okay. And so I was like going back to it like a second or third time with the information of knowing where it winds up.
Gotcha.
I think it will be beneficial. And I still think it's a little boring. It's just not quite something I would navigate to. But I was surprised at how efficient and, you know, well done it was. And I was especially surprised at how good so many, like all of the effects really were.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing too, is they're so consistently done, but all of the leprechaun stuff is done with forced perspective.
All of it?
The majority of it.
Okay.
Like when he's down in the in the land of the leprechauns and he's playing the fox chase for them. Mm-hmm. That's all forced perspective. There's like behind the scenes footage that's very impressive.
I would like to see. I was trying to figure it out, especially when he's telling the story the first time of capturing King Brian. Yeah. And I was trying to see where the lines were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they both looked physical. And it was just like, of the two movies we watched, this had the better effects. The one from 1959, you know?
Well, because they're practical.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't always mean better, but...
No, but I think it offers something, like you said, more physical, where you can like feel the presence of a thing. Well, and I think it's why stuff like Muppet stuff works. Because even if the Muppet doesn't look like a real thing, it's a physical thing that's there.
Well, and to say the word again, it's physics, because they sped up the leprechauns a lot. In a way that something smaller would be faster, bouncier. Sure. You know what I mean? Just shrinking somebody down isn't necessarily going to do the job. And right. So that I really liked. This is one of those movies, though, from the time period where everything is just dubbed like weirdly ADR'd.
Yeah.
And
it's not the best.
And I only wrote a couple of notes down, but I wrote, this horse is a jerk.
Well, it's like it gets taken over by a puka.
Okay.
A couple times.
So it's taken over by one.
It's not a puka. It's just like a normal horse, and her name is Cleopatra. But when she gets up on the mountain, she sort of gets possessed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's also terrifying. Whatever that neon effect is.
Which, like, Disney does that a lot in this time period because there's a similar thing that happens in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. It's, like, just neon effects all over the place.
It's almost like how sometimes, like, horror effects from the 80s are scarier than anything today. It's like there's just this weird, like, factor to it. But, because what was the mountain? It was Knocknasheega? Knocknasheega. I mean, it's a fairy mountain. It totally makes sense. But I was going to be like, what is up with this place? Because then by the end, when she was like, because she was also chasing the horse by the end.
Well, so she was like super mad because she finally found out that Sean Connery was there to replace her father and they were going to have to leave the gatehouse, which is where she was born and has lived her whole life. And so she was trying to wrangle the horse so that they could move all of their belongings, but Cleopatra kept running away, so she ran up the mountain chasing Cleopatra, who was subsequently taken over by the puka and scared her till she fell.
And got a fever. So
she fell, and then it was like raining, and there was like a lot going on. You know how people were back in the day, where like you get like a cut on your palm and you're just like gone forever.
Yeah, we all know what happened to Khal Drogo, but no, it was kind of like, and then just kind of fell and died, but no, it was fine. I looked a little bit online and it was saying that like the movie was a success and it was met with like praise when it was released and high praise too, but all of them were complaining about Sean Connery, and I was kind of like, what a weird place to draw a line.
Yeah, I mean, like, did they have a specific problem? I mean, he's Scottish, not Irish. That could definitely be a problem.
Well, A.H. Wheeler of the New York Times praised the cast, save for Connery, whom he described as merely tall, dark, and handsome.
That is all that character needs to be. What else do you want?
And then Variety called the film a rollicking Gaelic fantasy with meticulously painstaking production and a gem of a performance from Albert Sharp, though Sean Connery was artificial and the weakest in the otherwise distinguished direction.
Look,
And
this
there's
movie,
several more.
the acting in this movie is just okay across the board.
Well, it's the time period. So that's where I was like, what, maybe we're not versed in what good acting meant.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I was like, what a strange place to draw the line. And I thought he was fine. You talked about how you thought he was handsome. He is handsome, but the whole time it's just Sean Connery. I'm like, it's just too much. I know where we're heading. But also he was weirdly looking like Casey Cott to me.
Oh, I see it a little.
I was like, I want Kevin Keller from Glee to do young Sean Connery.
I see it a little, for sure. You said from Glee. You meant
Did I say
Riverdale.
from Glee? Yeah, sorry. That was a weird Freudian. Having watched it again with more focus and all that, it was cute. I definitely can see that. I'm curious to know if, I mean, you're relatively modern. You were watching it in the 90s. I'm curious if this is the kind of thing that would translate to, keep translating, like a modern child would be interested or entertained by it.
Probably not, unless it was something like if I had a child and I made them watch it on St. Patrick's Day when they were little, I think it would get to be a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't see sitting Noah down to watch this movie. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
I think he'd be scared of the Banshee.
I don't spend enough time around children to understand like the developmental stages where it's like at what point, would the whimsy overweigh the.
Yeah, well, because that's the thing is like I don't remember a time when I didn't know what this movie was. So I know that my mom was showing it to me before I had memories. So for me, there's like no question. I'm just like, it's good for kids. But because like when you told me that the Banshee scared you when you were little, I was like, what? I was like, I don't understand. Like it didn't compute.
Well, and also, as I mentioned, I had a track record with Banshees by that time. So it was also triggering. It was like, this again.
Again, not again. Yeah, I don't know. It just like, for me, I understand why I like it because I think my mom watched it as a girl also.
Because also, Banshees, it's a little bit false. They're not Grim Reapers. And this is treating it kind of like a Grim. One of my favorite.
She's like a harbinger.
Yeah, but like, she's like at the door. Like
it's because she's like announcing the death. Her whales call the Koshtabauer.
Well, one of I'd have to do research. I'm talking about mythology.
In this movie, that's what happened.
Because actually, weirdly, one of my favorite depictions of a banshee in recent memory is from season 2 of American Gods. The 3 wailing women. Yeah. And they're just outside the mortuary for like a week.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the episode, the characters are like, God, like, and I liked the way that they looked. And I liked the way that it was, because it's like something like Teen Wolf. Obviously, Lydia's very active. Like she's like a player. And my understanding of Banshees is they're very passive. It's like, it's very atmospheric, but. Yeah, so, I liked the 3 wishes.
I think my favorite part about the 3 wishes is that he manages to get him to do it twice, even though you think he's like smartened up the second time, but he's by that point so sad that basically Darby ends up taking Katie's place in the Koshtabauer because it's come and it has to take someone. So he wishes his 3rd wish to let it take him instead, and then King Brian is like riding in it with him. And he says, I wish I could go all the way with you. And he says, oh, I wish you could too. And that's his 4th wish. And I love that he did it for like less nefarious purposes the second time. It's just like very nice. It ends up being like kind of a sweet story about this like
weird friendship.
Yeah, weird friendship between an old man who, it's a little bit like the Prayer for Mad Sweeney thing, because Darby's the only one who like believes in the little people, and King Brian like recognizes that by the end of it. It's nice.
And it is one of those things that I do get. I get sidetracked with the reality of it about like what I would wish for and stuff. And I get frustrated when the characters don't do things the way I think they should. Because I'm like,
oh, sure.
Just take the pot of gold and go. Like, don't even get out while the getting's good. You know what I mean? This isn't Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Just...
Yeah, but I mean, it is definitely one of those things where you're like, be careful what you wish for, because it's like you wish for the crock of gold or like, you know, maybe let's say you make 3 wishes for crocks of gold and then you die 3 days later. It's like you gotta make sure you like have a long life and then, you know, a healthy life and then you get the gold. And it's just he's like making the smart decision the second time around, but it's very I understand what you mean. You get caught up in the like modern day logistics of it rather than just like accepting the fairy tale portion of it, essentially. Yeah, I get it.
Okay, well, I think that's good.
Yay! Happy St. Patrick's Day! I won't ever make you watch it again, I promise.
I mean, you can. It makes me feel bad. Like,
why does it make you feel bad?
Because you don't like it so much.
So I can watch it by myself and have a good time.
I wasn't like grumbling. No, you weren't
grumbling at all.
I would watch it again.
Also, it was your suggestion to watch it this year. So I took you up on it. All right. Well, we hope that you had a good St. Patrick's Day and let us know what you think of these 2 gems from the near and distant past. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at So I'm Watching, Instagram at So I'm Watching This Show. You can also follow along with all the episodes and everything else that links out from our website, soimwatching.com. And other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us. Bye.
She's my dear, my darling one, my smiling and beguiling one. I love the ground she walks upon. My darling Irish girl.